Before we begin, hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell us in the comments what you'd do if your best friend turned on you for fame. Because after this story, you'll never look at friendship the same way again. It began on a quiet June morning in Anchorage, Alaska, the kind of morning where even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Thunderbird Falls Trail stretched through the dense forest, a maze of pine and fog. The sound of rushing water echoed from far below, muffled beneath the heavy air. That's where two teenage girls walked side by side, laughing, chatting, sharing secrets, unaware that only one of them would leave the woods alive. 19-year-old Cynthia Hoffman was bright, trusting, and loyal to a fault. Her best friend, Denali Brehmer, was known for her wild spirit and social media obsession. They'd known each other for years, inseparable since middle school. To anyone watching, their friendship looked genuine. But behind Denali's smiles was a secret dark enough to destroy them both. When Cynthia didn't come home that night, her father called police immediately. He told them she had gone hiking with her best friend and never returned. At first, it sounded like another Alaskan tragedy, a lost hiker swallowed by wilderness. Search teams combed the trails, calling her name into the trees. Hours turned into days. Then, a fisherman reported something floating near the Eklutna River. It was Cynthia. Her hands were bound with duct tape. A single bullet wound marked the back of her head. The discovery shook the small community. Detectives from Anchorage police arrived on scene, their faces grim. The cold air smelled of pine and gunpowder, and the river carried away what little evidence it could. Detective Alvarez, a veteran investigator, took charge. When he reviewed Cynthia's phone, he noticed her final selfie, a photo taken at the trailhead with Denali standing right beside her, smiling. It wasn't the smile of a killer, or maybe it was. The investigation began turning fast. Denali's story didn't add up. She claimed they'd gone hiking, and Cynthia just disappeared. But Alvarez sensed something rehearsed in her tone, too polished, too calm. Her social media posts came off strange, too, dramatic, emotional, even performative. One caption read, "I just want my best friend back." But the comments were filled with sympathy, attention, and likes. When detectives pulled Denali's phone records, they found something chilling. Hours after Cynthia's death, Denali had been messaging an unknown man who called himself Tyler. He claimed to be a millionaire from Indiana, and he had promised her $9 million if she recorded herself killing someone. The evidence was impossible to ignore. Denali hadn't just lost her best friend. She had planned her death. Detective Alvarez stared at the chat logs in disbelief. His partner leaned in and muttered, "Who the hell is Tyler?" Alvarez exhaled. "We're about to find out." He ordered a digital trace of the IP address linked to Tyler's messages. When the results came back, every officer in the room froze. The signal wasn't local. It led thousands of miles away, to a quiet town in Indiana. And that's where the nightmare truly began. The trace led investigators to a small, quiet town in Indiana, far from the snow and silence of Anchorage. The name attached to the IP address wasn't Tyler. It was Darren Schillmiller, a 21-year-old living with his parents in a modest home. He wasn't a millionaire. He wasn't even close. He was unemployed, broke, and spending his nights behind a screen, pretending to be rich, powerful, and untouchable. Detective Alvarez leaned back in his chair as the report came in. "So this is our millionaire," he muttered. The FBI joined the case immediately, confirming that Schillmiller had used multiple fake profiles to manipulate teenagers online. But what made this case stand out wasn't just catfishing. It was the motive. He wasn't after money or fame. He wanted control. He wanted to watch someone die. Through messages recovered from Denali Brehmer's phone, investigators uncovered a horrifying chain of events. Darren had convinced her he would pay $9 million if she committed a murder and sent proof. Photos, videos, anything to prove she did it. For weeks, he'd planted the idea in her mind, slowly twisted her thoughts until she believed it was real. Denali wasn't alone, either. The messages revealed that she had recruited 4 of her teenage friends to help her. The group saw it as a mission, something dangerous and exciting. They planned it over Snapchat, sending each other short videos and private messages that vanished within seconds. But what they didn't know was that screenshots and data recovery would later expose every single word. On June 2nd, 2019, the plan went into motion. Denali told Cynthia they were going on a fun hike at Thunderbird Falls. She told her to bring her phone, bring snacks, and dress warm. Cynthia agreed, smiling like she always did, trusting the girl she called her best friend. As they walked deeper into the woods, Denali's friends followed behind. At one point, Cynthia joked about how creepy the forest was. Denali laughed. Then she pulled out duct tape. The messages between Denali and Tyler. That night grew darker. "Are you doing it?" he wrote. "Prove it." She sent photos of Cynthia tied up near the riverbank. A few minutes later, she messaged him again. "It's done." Detectives replayed those moments over and over in the interrogation room. It didn't seem real. A teenager driven to murder by nothing more than a lie and a promise. Denali claimed she thought the man was genuine, that she truly believed millions were waiting for her. But something else in the messages caught Alvarez's eye, something that made his stomach turn. Just hours after Cynthia's death, Denali recorded a video laughing, saying, "We did it." That's when Alvarez knew they weren't dealing with just a manipulated girl. They were dealing with someone who had lost her humanity. The FBI moved quickly to arrest Schillmiller in Indiana. They found more than just messages, hundreds of conversations with other teens, each one darker than the last. He wasn't just a scammer. He was a predator hiding behind a screen. As Denali sat in her holding cell, she had no idea that her so-called millionaire had already confessed. But the worst discovery was still to come, because on Denali's phone, investigators found a short video clip, a video from that night, the one showing Cynthia's final moments. And in that clip, they could hear Denali laughing. The room went silent as the video began to play. The only sound was a low hum of the fluorescent lights above the FBI evidence table. Detective Alvarez stood frozen, his jaw tightening. On the screen, the camera shook slightly. It was handheld, filmed in the dim light of the woods. Cynthia's voice was muffled, scared, pleading. "Denali, what's happening?" she said. In the background, someone laughed, that same unmistakable laugh investigators had heard earlier. Then came the sound of a gun clicking, a splash of movement, and finally, silence. When the video ended, no one spoke. It was less than 30 seconds long, but it told them everything they needed to know. This wasn't a random act of violence. It was deliberate, filmed for pleasure, traded for a promise that never existed. The evidence against Denali Brehmer was now undeniable. The FBI traced every file, every message, every transfer of data between her and Darren Schillmiller. They found that after the murder, Schillmiller had immediately demanded the video, and Denali had sent it without hesitation. But there was no money, no payout, no reward, just a sickening message that read, "Good job." Detective Alvarez took the stand in court months later, describing the video as one of the most disturbing pieces of evidence he'd ever seen. Reporters filled the courtroom, their pens scratching across notepads as prosecutors painted the picture of betrayal, a teenage girl who'd killed her best friend for an illusion. Denali sat quietly at the defense table, her hands trembling. She told the court she was manipulated, that she thought it was all an online challenge, a twisted game. But as the prosecutor replayed the laughter echoing to the video, her story began to crumble. There was no remorse, no panic, no confusion, just cold amusement. When Schillmiller's trial began in Indiana, the truth about his online life shocked everyone. He had posed as Tyler, the millionaire, promising money and affection to young girls in exchange for violent acts. He'd used photos of random men, stolen from social media, to build his persona. But this time, his manipulation had gone too far. It had led to murder. The jury didn't take long. Denali was convicted of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and evidence tampering. Schillmiller faced similar charges of solicitation to commit murder and child exploitation. In the final moments of the trial, Cynthia's father spoke. His voice shook as he held up a photo of his daughter smiling beside Denali, the two of them, arms around each other, just weeks before the murder. "She trusted her," he said softly. She called her sister. The courtroom stayed silent. Even Denali lowered her head. Detective Alvarez later admitted that the case haunted him for years. Not because of the brutality. He'd seen worse, but because of the betrayal, the idea that friendship, something sacred, could be used as bait for blood, Cynthia Hoffman's body was laid to rest near Eklutna Lake, the same water where killers had tried to hide her. Locals still visit the site, leaving flowers along the riverbank where she took her last breath. And every now and then, a passerby swears they can still hear laughter echoing through the woods, not from joy, but from a memory of a friendship that turned fatal. If you think this story was chilling, you're not ready for what comes next. Subscribe, stay tuned, and brace yourself, because some betrayals don't just break hearts, they end lives.